Hey everyone, this is Adam. I noticed many of my fellow students were having some real challenges understanding file paths and how code uses file paths. And so I thought I'd try to do a little video for everybody to help them understand this stuff. So I have a command prompt here. It's kind of small on the properties. Let's just make it nice and big. And as far as the font goes, let's go to like 28, something like that, so everybody can hopefully see that better now. Okay. Now, here is, you can use the tree function to tell you sort of, there's what the folder structure looks like. I'm in this directory code, and it has a folder underneath of it called week 08, and it has an images directory underneath that, and then a temp directory is a sibling to it. Okay. If I wanted to get something inside the images folder, let's say, I would say images backslash, sorry, I would say week 08 backslash images backslash beach, let's say. Okay. And you see it open the beach for me. And that's how from this directory, I'm able to reference relatively right here. Now, at the command prompt, you can change directories. The command is cd. And if I went into week 8, right, and I was now in this directory, you'd see that in order for me to get to that same thing, I wouldn't say week 8. I would just say images beach. And then that would open it up for us, right, just like it does. What if I was, in order to go back to the parent directory, you change directory with 2 dots, and that takes you back up, as you'll see, to the code directory just above it. Okay. What if I was instead inside this temp directory, or sorry, week 08, backslash temp, like that. I was here, and I needed to get access to something that was in the images directory. And as you can see, images is a sibling to temp. So what you do is you go up here and then back down. And the way you do that is you say dot dot backslash images backslash beach dot jpeg. You see how that's a relative path from the temp directory up to the week 8 and then back down to the images directory to get what you want. And the reason I start here is that all of this is really the information on how you can reference things relative. And the same thing works inside your code. How you reference things at the command prompt is exactly the same. You can even start back at the root. In Windows, you'd use C backslash users or something like that. And so I could actually go like this to reference that same file. I could go like this. I'll just copy the whole thing like this. And instead of temp, I would say images beach. And you can see that works too. That's called an absolute path to it from the root. Okay, so we have relative paths from a folder, relative paths from 2 different folders. We went to a sibling folder, went up to the parent and back down, and then those are all relative, and we showed how to use an absolute path to load something. Okay, so let's open, and for those that are having a hard time seeing this, this is week 08, and week 08 has images and temp underneath of it. And we have a piece of code right here in this folder and images right here. Okay, and those images have all the images we were using this last week to do our assignment. So now if we start VS Code, okay, and let's open a folder. We're going to open that code folder. Okay, and boom, you see we're at code. There's week 08. There's our code right here, file examples, and there's all of our images in this image folder underneath of it. So if I say image.openBeach, what's going to happen here when I run this code, okay, is going to fail. The reason it's going to fail, it says no such file or directory. That's because the code is running. If we go back here, right, my file's here, but the images are over here, right, inside here. So you go, I know, I just need to add images / beach, right? No problem. And if I save it and run it again, it's still going to fail. You're like, wait a second, I don't understand. Why is it going to fail? It's going, well, that's because see right here, this path right down here, it's running from documents code. And so because it's running from that location, it needs a path relative to that location. So you go, I know, I'll just change my directory to week 08, right? And now I'm at week 08, and images beach should be the correct path, right? Well, you'd think that would work, but it doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because it changes your directory back to this directory right here when it launches Python. And so that doesn't work either. So what you have to give it is you have to understand that code is your location that you're currently running from. And so in order to run your code from here, you have to give it the path from the code folder, which would include week 08 / images. And if we run this code, you see it worked for the first time. Yay, that worked. Okay. Another way to do this is to give it a relative path, an absolute path like this right here. I could just go, you know what? I'll just put this right here like this. I'm going to change the backslashes to // because in Python it doesn't matter. It allows you to do either. And in backslashes are sometimes used as escape characters, so it means something different. And if we run this piece of code, guess what? It didn't work. Oh, because I missed a backslash right there. And now if we run it, it works, right? Okay. But the problem with creating your code like this is that when you turn this code in, your professor isn't going to have this path. And if you give the code to someone else, they're not going to have this path either on their computer. And so it's going to work on your box, but not someone else's. And so that's not great. And that's really why we use relative paths like this. Okay. So let's say you got this working, everything's working, and you closed this down, closed the folder, and you came back and you opened it again the next time, right? We open the folder, you go documents, and you go, we're going to go into the code folder, and we're going to go into week 08, and I'm going to go, oh, right there, select folder, and then I run my code again, right? And it goes, blah, it failed again. Like, wait a second, I had it running last time. Why did it fail? And it's because the path we chose this time wasn't the code folder, but the week 08 folder. And so our path is broken again because we chose a different folder to run our code from. And so in this case, we'd get rid of this right here and run it again. And now you could see it'll work. So depending on which folder you open, because I've seen people have 2 or 3 or even 4 levels of hierarchy inside their directory structure inside Visual Studio Code. So you really need to understand which your working directory is right here and make sure that your relative references are in relationship to that. Now there is a way to work around this. And what you do is you always put things in relative reference to where the file is at. And so you can import the operating system and you can import the path lib, okay? And what you can do is create path, we'll call it file path, equals the pathlib dot path of file. Okay, now file is a special variable inside Python, and what it does is it represents this file right here, right now, that's running. And all you're asking is, hey, where's this file located on my hard drive? And it gives you an absolute path to it. Okay, and you don't really want the file, but what you want is you want the parent of this file. Okay, and now you have a path to where this file is. And now you can take this file path right here, and you can do one of two things. With the OS, you can say os.change directory, and you can say go to file path. Okay, and so even though I'm in, and we go back to, like, we can open a completely different directory now, right? And so my code should run correctly because it's referencing in relationship to where my Python code is, right? This should work. And it loaded it correctly, just like that. If I moved this images folder underneath the temp directory, okay, I could still change this to temp images JPEG, and it should still run correctly. Okay, so it's really easy to make changes if you use something like this. The other way to do this is not change the directory, but simply add file path right here to this. Now, this is normally a division operator, but when you use it with paths, it knows to join these two things together as a path. And so this should also work with that. Okay, so this is a simple way to, in relationship, and if you give this code to someone else, the cool thing is it's just going to keep working on a different computer, or if you open a different folder. Like if we close this right now, right, close the folder and go back and open, let's say we open documents and we open just the code folder instead of the week 08 folder, right, and we run this code again, it works again from whichever directory you're in. Okay, so this is a way to handle relative references within your code and the files associated with them. I hope this was useful.